whatever. But if you just keep a simple, or just have a simple response saying, hey, look, we met, or we did this, or we talked, whatever it is, just follow up. And a lot of times people will thank you because they are busy. They're going to forget. And especially if you already get engaged with them and they really liked that conversation you were having with them, they're probably going to thank you for saying, thank you for following up with me. I've been busy. Yes, let's connect later. Let's talk about D&D. Let's talk about like what you do for Twitch, whatever it may be. It's follow up is key. And thank you, Neil, for like making that point.
Can I add a caveat to that?
Yeah. You
can follow up, and also always appreciate it when you follow up, but don't be pestering. Don't follow up. Like if they've ignored you after honestly 2 follow-ups, it's probably just let it die down for now. See them at the next event or something. And if they don't email you for a while, don't follow up being like, oh, I guess you're too busy for me, because I've gotten that, and that's really rude. And then I don't want to follow up with them.
That's happened many times to me, where people have bothered me, and I feel like I'm bothering other people, and they're kind of indifferent the first 2 or 3 times I meet them, and then all of a sudden the 4th time they're like, oh my god, Star, it's so nice to meet you, and I'm like, whoa, why does this change so much? It's did something happen and I wasn't around? Maybe they actually checked out my social media and saw what I was about, or maybe we have mutual friends that they found out about. You never know, so just kind of have no expectations when you're going in. I also want to talk about touch points really quick. What I thought you were going to say, which is, you're talking about following up. I thought touch points was, my definition is whenever I'm talking to somebody, everyone's when I talk to other people, they're like, I can't remember names. I'm better with faces. You hear that all the time. And what I do is really try to remember their name, and I try to repeat it back to them immediately. And then I also try to listen to if they have some keywords, they work at a certain company, or they like dogs, or they talk about their wife and kids and stuff like that. So next time I meet them, I can remember something personal about them, and usually people don't do that, so they're actually impressed when it was actually something really small.
Yeah, I love that, because one of my favorite things to ask is what do you do for fun? Because especially when you're talking about, don't get me wrong, work can be really fun, but it's good to also talk about what are your hobbies, what are your things that you enjoy doing, and learning more about people as human beings. Yeah.
Cool. So, all of this leveling up is great and everything, but how do we know this actually works, right? Especially if this is something relatively new for you or whatever, how does this work? So from you guys been doing this, what are some, positive networking experiences that you've had?
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, I've had a lot of positive networking experiences, but I think the most positive ones, I've always felt pressure to go to big parties and network and be like, oh, I have to make all the connections and do whatever. But the best times I've had positive networking experiences have been when people have been like, hey, let's just grab a coffee with a small group of people, and then you can more intimately get to know them. I've found all of those to be much better than any party I've ever been to, dinners or just anything like that, and just having when they're asking me for mentorship or advice, doing something simple like paying for my coffee, they don't have to, and I'll try to pay for my own coffee, but it's knowing that the time that you take away from someone is very valuable to them, and acknowledging that, that gives me a positive experience with them.
Yeah, I mean, I could the example that comes to mind for me. Andrew and I met on a bus 2 years ago. So it doesn't always immediately come over as a networking experience. We were just striking up conversation.
He wore an awesome Luigi cosplay, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I am the best Luigi. That's not negotiable. But just to kind of revisit. We said marketing yourself is kind of one of the core tenets of what we're discussing here. I think a lot of the time a reservation that people have is that they don't feel like they have enough experience behind them, or they feel like they have to earn the conversation, which I don't think is necessarily true. I think the reason we started collaborating together, of course I'd had credits and things that I'd worked with, prior to, but most of our conversation was really around just perspectives on games, and how we felt things were in the industry and kind of what our expectations were going into PAX, people we wanted to meet, things we wanted to talk about. And I think in having that conversation, we allowed our values to shine through a little bit more than, say, our experience. And if you're just starting out, that's honestly a really great way to go, because there is an absolute reservoir of talent in this field. What a lot of people are looking for are people who are very personable and relatable, who have values that, at least in some capacity, kind of bounce off of their own.
So a lot of people think that other people are scary, and I just want to say, if you want to, again, coming to it genuinely wanting to know people, when I first started working in this industry, I knew I had to talk to people, and I had a lot of anxiety. I think we all do, because it's scary. But I say the only time you have to feel that way is if you're just trying to chase clout, if you're just trying to talk to somebody because they can get you a job or because they can get something for you. I would avoid that. I came in with genuinely wanting to know people, so I showed interest in everyone, from students to veterans in the industry, and I had again, no expectations. For me, there's an innumerable amount of stories of how networking is happening. Just a few years ago, it's really hard to get into the industry sometimes, especially if you've already been in the industry for years and you're not getting those jobs, and you're competing against students and people that are older than you and have different kinds of experience. I remember a few years ago, it took me 8 months to find a job after I'd already been in the industry for several years. And then this year, I find myself looking for a job, and people have been recommending me behind my back. I just did an interview yesterday, Victoria, and someone said that you recommended me for a job, and I was my jaw dropped. I was oh my goodness, I was not expecting that. So
because you're great and I love you.
Oh, I love you too. You're amazing. And I didn't ask Victoria to endorse me. I didn't say, please help me look for a job. She just did it because we know each other and we talk, and yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the same for me in a lot of cases. And one of the things, I'm passionate about, and we all are, being in the being involved in games in some way, shape, or form. And when you talk to people like that, and then when you get to that level where you understand a little bit more what they're doing, what they're looking out for, for me personally, there's nothing better than finding out that, hey, I met this person last month, and I just met this other person, and I know that these people would not only mesh together well, but are can provide help or assistance, or just even if it's two gamers that are looking to form a group and stuff, to know that you can help make those connections is a very rewarding experience. It may not benefit you directly or even indirectly, but that's okay, because I think just the whole process in itself is really why we're all here and care so much about games as a whole, and just that in itself can be a rewarding experience. So there's definitely a lot that can, and for me personally, that's always a positive thing, to know that, hey, I helped someone else get to where they need to be. And it could return, it might not, but just going in with that mindset, I think you're always going to succeed one way or another.
I feel like everyone I know that's really successful in the industry is like that, where they're not just in it for themselves and their own job and what they want to do. I feel like the most successful people are the ones that pull each other up, and yeah, the favor is returned.
Full circle with the picture. Teamwork makes the dream work, and DreamWorks actually made Shrek 2.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
That's deep.
We're done. This panel's... we're good.
I love you, Mustafa. Okay. Yeah, so, habit. So as we all probably know, there's been some, awkward moments that we've all probably come across, and sometimes, these things can turn into habits and other things. So, what type of habits and actions should, we avoid while we're networking?
I think sometimes there's a negativity that comes up. Gamers love and in some cases don't love a lot of different aspects of video games. But the thing to remember is there's a lot of games out there, and there's a game for everyone that everyone can enjoy something, right? So when engaging in conversation with folks about games, try to keep things as positive as possible. Rather than talking about experiences that you're not enjoying, especially when you're first meeting people, you just don't want to be a person who's necessarily giving a lot of negativity around what is already a very difficult industry, but instead talking about like you're talking about positive positive experiences and things that you're really enjoying and you're finding meaningful are really important. So I would try to avoid negativity as much as you can.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because everyone in the game industry talks. Like we're not very closed off, honestly. Like we share like details and stuff. Oh my god! Like for example, like Star and I are in the same community manager Discord. So like if there's a very rude like YouTuber or Twitch streamer who's demanding keys or like breaks an embargo, it's like everyone in that community manager Discord knows because we tell each other. We're like, hey, don't give this person a key in the future. So you know, you never know what will happen if you. Oh, can I swear? If you talk badly about someone, so avoid that. And I would say another like bad habit is definitely like people can tell when you're talking to them for clout reasons, when you're just like trying to like rise above the ranks and all that kind of stuff. So don't do that. Just be nice to other people, help them out when you can, and just be friendly.
Yeah.
Just be friendly to each other.
And to play off of that, a good mindset that I always have with talking about anybody, always assume that whatever you're saying about that person knows. And if you go in with that mindset, you'll never have an issue. So that's my quick little tip there, because I've done that and it's saved my butt so many times. Because we all have our moments, we all have our gripes, of course. But, you know, just leave it always in a positive light, or, you know, just casually mention it and then move on. But if you always approach it from whatever you're saying about that entity, that company, that individual, always assume that they know, and then you'll be fine there.
One thing I'll say, and I don't necessarily have like specific examples of things I've encountered with this. I mean, it's just kind of scattered throughout, but I think we all struggle on some level with like, you know, overcoming certain aspects of social awkwardness and things like that, and that's fine. But I think there are certain like basic tenets of engagement with people that, you know, you really can't afford to overlook. Like for instance, I think there's often an aversion to like anything political in games, which very rarely actually means political and typically, you know, is referencing any demographic ever. So like acknowledging that, you know, people exist and avoiding saying things that discredit their, I guess the fact that they have a right to be present and involved and engaged in this medium at the same level as everyone else is very important. And then also just like on a conversational basis, for instance, if you walk up to a group of people, you know, making sure that if you're looking to speak to one specific person, you're still acknowledging everybody that's present. You're not, you know, overlooking, because I think those are the things that do kind of come across as like you're seeking clout rather than attempting to engage in, you know, meaningful discussion with people that you want to get to know better.
I want to add something that no one's talked about yet, but maybe I get this more than you guys do. So I do stream on Twitch, and what I stream on Twitch is primarily talking about the game industry, because it's actually a huge subject that not many people do talk about, or they do, but they don't actually work in the industry. One of the things I get a lot is unsolicited advice. A lot, where I have a lot more experience. I've been in the industry for almost a decade, so I have a lot of experience. I talk to a lot of people, and I have a lot of information, and people want to like come up to me and tell me how to do social media and how to present myself, and even tell me how to network with people and that kind of stuff. And I'm very polite, and I'm like, oh, thank you so much, I appreciate it, that sort of thing. But it's not good. I think it's kind of, it can be selfish when you're going up to somebody and telling them how they should act a certain way, and you think you're being helpful, but it's really for you to feel better. Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned this, because early on in my career and stuff, because what Star was talking about there can easily be like misinterpreted, where, and I've done this myself, where I would be so passionate about like helping someone else, I could just reach out and be like, oh look, you're not doing this way, and you could, and it would, and you know what, it's great that you have that mindset about being passionate, being helping others, but you still need to be mindful of those barriers and stuff, and also understand and be a little bit empathetic of those people that you might be reaching out to. They might know all of that stuff. Like in Star's case, she's been doing it for 12 years, but maybe she's just doing something differently because she wants to, or someone else that you're reaching out to just doesn't have the time for it. There could be any number of reasons. It's always good just to be mindful of those barriers and not necessarily just like just shoot everything else out there, because in some ways it not necessarily like it's an attack or anything, but it can turn people off to engaging with you further, and that's not what you're looking to do.
I would really like to follow up on that, because I think as you're discussing like barriers and boundaries, another important thing to consider